It's probably the understatement of the last 2 or 3 years to say that Motorsport Games really has had a bit of a hard time in the past, 2 or 3 years. It's been like a tornado. Every time you think it might be slowing down, it just gets worse and it rips your house down. And this cannot be summed up better than in the horrid game that they released with NASCAR Ignition. And while that can be really funny to look at and talk about, there are some things that for people who I think have been caught in the crossfire is not funny. For instance, the stock price falling by over 99% in the last basically 2 years, not really good for people who actually had money invested in this company and thought it would be a real good investment and venture. Also, the irreparable reputation of this company means that anybody who's been working for it, who has been caught up in this mess, is probably going to have a hard time getting another job because they've been associated with this crap. But the last few weeks have been especially a downward spiral. In my opinion, a complete death spiral. First off, you got to look at what happened before Christmas. I know that there's been some other stuff between the last upload of a game and then, but this is the big stuff we've seen lately. The iRacing versus IndyCar rights fiasco. To kind of give a Sparks Notes version on this, the agreement between iRacing and IndyCar was ending in 2022. And with this, IndyCar went with an exclusive rights deal for gaming with Motorsport Games. This killed off a huge section of the sim racing community, as while there is a big base on iRacing for NASCAR content, there is definitely a base for just about any racing content on iRacing, and open wheel and IndyCar especially was actually a pretty big section of that base. With this agreement, and with IndyCar basically going really old head on this, and no sides really having any concessions, this meant the end of many things, two of which being the iRacing Indy 500, a huge event held every year, as well as the iRacing Open Wheel League not racing at tracks IndyCar races at, and also different models of IndyCar basically being taken off and made illegal to use. And if you stream it, well, you could be in legal trouble. So while IndyCar ultimately made the foot shooting decision, Motorsport Games in a lot of ways was the catalyst for this, and many people directed their anger not only at IndyCar but at them. After all, they were the ones who really set up this kind of arrangement with IndyCar, and many could see this as them forcing their hand a little bit. Add to this the fact that, well, Motorsport Games is seen all the time in every way except making games, and making good ones at that, especially when you look at where their money goes. For instance, a lot of video came out of them sponsoring a dirt car. They sponsor the 78 Cup Series car, which, while not exactly running up front, is still not a cheap endeavor whatsoever. It is expensive as hell to sponsor any team in the NASCAR Cup Series, and at this rate, you kind of wonder where all the money has been going to. They've been at F1 events, at the track, and they have giant setups in front of NASCAR tracks, which, while fun, will definitely cost a pretty penny when it comes to the fees that are entailed in getting setups in front of NASCAR races. Now, Alan Bailey tweeted this out, and I trust him as a source here. Nothing I can confirm yet, but it's not looking good at all. Wouldn't be surprised if the company closes its doors this week/month. Nothing official yet. And while I think a lot of people are kind of hoping this happens, I don't see this happening. Because even though it seems like time after time after time, their misallocation of funds is something that could end them, they somehow managed to pull a rabbit out of their ass and managed to keep going. And I think that unfortunately for the quality of racing games, they're going to keep going. They're going to always find a way, and they're going to weasel their way through. And the thing is that with this kind of optics of them putting money in everything but games, you look at what they have to go and what they have to make, and it really seems like a daunting task for a company that can barely make one game that isn't even functional. They have NASCAR 23, NASCAR 24, IndyCar 24, and the Heat 5 2022 DLC. I don't see any of those really happening the way that they're going with it, especially on the NASCAR side. So where do they get the money, and where does the blame go to all of this? Because I think that's all what we're wondering. Who do we blame for this stuff? Well, if you go with the way that the company seems to make things, they would blame it on those working for them. A worker testimonial came out from a former employee, and in his review of his job after leaving Motorsport Games, he left these as his cons. Extremely mentally draining and stressful. Management seems to be clueless. They claim to have a no-blame culture, which seems to only apply to those at the top. His advice? Listen to the employees' advice and warnings before they quit. Pretty damning, and the thing is, this is not unique whatsoever. For years now, many have been leaving in droves from Motorsport Games and leave very similar reviews. Mike Straw on Twitter from Inside Gaming has also put that sources say NASCAR 23 is still in the design phase and that its release is in question. And it was further extrapolated by saying this is after NASCAR 22 wasn't even released, was postponed to be NASCAR 23. There were designs that the company changed and the lead designer had left, so they're really all up in the air on how this goes. A source for them also said that the NASCAR development team for the company currently sits in the single digits. The sources they've talked to don't believe, though, that a NASCAR game will release. And at this rate, will never release again, at least from this company, who has the contract with NASCAR through 2029. Scheduled for a mid-2023 release at the moment, NASCAR 23 honestly will probably be a similar situation to NASCAR 22. Now, on top of this, Motorsport Game employees, and one in particular, has threatened to leak source codes of 4 games, and also developers have threatened lawsuits over unpaid wages as well. Starting out with the lawsuits, it looks like around 30 of their Russian employees at Motorsport Games haven't been paid since October. If all the debts to employees aren't paid by January 25th, it is in their legal right to file a lawsuit. And honestly, I think they probably will. Now, Motorsport Games claims they can't pay them due to the war in Ukraine, but seeing how they have so many Russian connections, it's kind of hard to believe that. New contracts were offered to those Russian employees to relocate to Georgia, but it also gave them a 20% reduction from their Russian salaries. So, pretty slimy stuff afoot here, taking advantage of people who maybe need the job that they have, or taking advantage of a horrible situation altogether. Which, to be honest, with the higher-ups in Motorsport Games, I'm not surprised whatsoever. They've seemed to do everything possible to be slime balls with this. And this comes after the entire board of directors had left the company late last year due to the fact that there were so many funding disputes. As for the code threat, it was for NASCAR Ignition, NASCAR Heat 5, IndyCar's game, and KartCraft. Even those unaware of the situation had said that they weren't surprised. And I gotta ask, what does this say about the culture of Motorsport Games? Yes, a culture in a company doesn't necessarily make a good game, but I bet you it ruins one or ruins the game at hand. And the fact that they can't get their shit together in any way and stuff is leaking every single week and every single month is absolutely ridiculous. Many of you may wonder why I don't make videos on this all the time, because a lot of this stuff can just be summed up in one video because it's so much of the same thing happening over and over and over and over again. And this is what the employees see as well, as they anticipate that the IndyCar release is next if it does happen, and that the NASCAR game is delayed to 2024 at the earliest. This is absolutely ridiculous. And seeing how these companies mess up with their funds, screw up any kind of schedule, and screw over people, this is why I don't believe what many people had said for so long about just give the game your money for this game so it'll help with the next one. No. That is stupid shill stuff to say. At this rate, why even bother? I mean, as someone like me who played NASCAR console games growing up, it honestly went from pissing me off to just flat out making me sad. Because this is how I, as a kid and as a teenager even, got into and stayed into NASCAR in many ways through a better immersion, whether it be with the EA games or with some of the Technics games at their best. It's gotten so bad that now many NASCAR fans are asking for EA to take the license away. Modern EA, knowing how bad it is. That is how messed up this has all gotten. Like I said, it just makes me sad, and as somebody who grew up with console games, I just don't put up with it anymore. Honestly, for about the last 3 or so years, I've stopped playing NASCAR console games because it's just such a mess. I'd rather do any kind of broadcasting or any kind of content on my channel when it comes to gaming, over on a sim like iRacing where I can actually make something worthwhile for people to watch and actually have fun with it. So with that, unfortunately, on a sad note, I'm going to pass it on to you. What do you think the future of NASCAR console gaming is? Do you think there's any way out of the current predicament, or is NASCAR just screwed? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're at it, leave a like on this video, share this video, and subscribe to my channel for more great NASCAR content. Thank you so much to all my channel members for your continued support. And until next time, have a good one.